The intention I meant to set at the beginning was that this practice helps us, may this practice helps us individually so that we can bring it to others. We can bring kind of our being and our presence and our experiences with others, shared with others, that the interconnection with everyone is larger. So, thank you. Andrew, Matt, Pat, and Anna have all recently talked about Buddhism's Four Noble Truths, or Stephen Batchelor's more proactive translation of the Four Ennobling Tasks. The first noble truth is straightforward. Because we're born, in addition to old age, suffering, and death, there are a lot of difficulties in between. In short, 10,000 joys, 10,000 sorrows. These difficulties range from mild to highly serious. Since each one impacts us, our nature is to react to these happenings or these realities. It's automatic, a knee-jerk reaction. It's hardwired. It also reinforces our sense of self with a capital S. Me separate, me Tarzan, me strong, which of course is a delusion because the tiniest mosquito carrying disease can take us all the way down very quickly. The second noble truth is that we automatically and quickly assign a feeling tone, which is called a Vedana, positive, negative, or neutral, to each of these happenings or realities. Then we and everyone else spends a great deal of energy clinging to the happenings that are pleasant, ignoring what's neutral, and pushing away or turning away from what's unpleasant. We're like hamsters on the wheel of samsara. A lot of this is unconscious. It's automatic. We're hardwired. But we can override that hardwiring with our intention. It's like our superpower. One of our superpowers is our attention. If the happening is difficult, it's helpful to pause. Things are not as they seem, nor are they different. Now, what does that mean? For a start, we can give ourselves some loving kindness and see if there's room to relax our reactivity. Now, these difficulties are juicy. By that, I mean they contain a lot of energy, which is helpful for us to use elsewhere rather than getting depleted by anxiety and worry, or by thinking we can avoid our feelings. What if things are not as they seem? With relaxed reactivity, we might remember that one of the three poisons is ignorance, defined as we just simply don't know what we don't know. It's also called delusion. What if our perception of the happening isn't accurate? Can we get curious about that? There are always miscommunications and misperceptions. In this pause, we have the opportunity to pivot, being curious, to investigate what we feel badly about, it's like going inside the difficulty, which is how we find the way out. The way in is the way out. We had a mini experience of this earlier, physically, when we'd been moving a bit, then pause to feel how we felt inside. I love how it's a body-mind field with all our myriad physical and mental interconnections. I had a large experience of this, the way in is the way out, physically, when I was kayaking down the Hall River in North Carolina, which is south of Durham, with a friend of mine, Sam. We went kayaking a lot. So there's a whitewater section of the Hall River, which I'd never been on, but he was eager for me to experience. And it has different names for different sections. So one is called the lunch counter. And there are these standing waves, and you're on the top in your little kayak being thrown up and down on these waves. We got through that okay. Then there were more sections, and then the last one was called the lockjaw. So this was so awful. What the lockjaw is that there are two boulders like this with the waterfall in between that goes straight down about 20 or 25 feet. Okay, so in front of these two boulders is another boulder. So the trick is you're going downstream pretty quickly. You've got to get around this boulder and then get your kayak straight again so that you go between those two big ones, drop down the waterfall into a pond at the bottom, a hole at the bottom. And Sam assured me you'd pop up out of the hole. I had no business on this river. We had no business on this river. The current was way too fast. It was low and fast. That's the worst. Okay, but I had a helmet, I had a jacket. It wasn't a kayak that you were skirted into. I knew I could, get out. I'm a good swimmer, I thought. Okay, this was about 20 years ago. All right. So Sam's going down the river ahead of me. I see that he navigates around that first boulder, drops down. I see him drop. And I think, okay, breathing in, I start down. And I got around the first boulder, but I didn't right myself again. So I got jammed sideways against these two huge boulders. I look at both shores to see if I can get to either shore. I can't, they're way too far. And there are plenty of rocks I could hold on to if the current weren't so swift and so strong. So there I am, jammed. Sam yells, get out on one of the rocks. So Sam is a good kayaker. That's also what prompted me to do this. I get out on the rock, I'm shaking like a leaf. And I'm thinking, now, what are they going to call? What are they going to tell my granddaughter? My Jolie, who, that her beloved Gam Jam was killed by doing something too dangerous. So in that moment, Sam yells at me. He says, send down the kayak. So I think, okay, I think I can do that. So somehow I get the kayak straight, kayak you know, goes down the waterfall. And I have this insight that the way in is the way out. I have to go down the waterfall by myself without the kayak, clutching my paddle, still clutching my paddle. So somehow, I don't know, somehow I made it down the waterfall. Sam had emptied my kayak, clambered back in it. We somehow paddled to the takeout point where his truck was. We went back to his place where his wife had fixed us hot tea. And I swore I would never do white water again. And I haven't. So that's my way in, is the way out, physically, story. So these happenings or these realities initiated by us or others is what make up our lives. Those in our six senses are really all we have to work with. By working from the inside out, we have a shot at transforming difficulties. This, to me, is an important reason to meditate. Meditation can calm us down enough to get in touch with what we're thinking and feeling. As we become more intimate with ourselves, we can more deeply experience the impermanence of everything. Then insights happen to more skillfully deal and dance with all these happenings. It's the dance of life. After all, a good percentage of them are pleasurable. Another word for transformation is healing. When Stephen Levine was asked what he thought healing was, he said, "I'm not exactly sure what healing is, but my sense is that it's a transformation that comes about when we touch with love, mercy, and compassion that which we have previously touched with fear, hatred, and aversion. When we open to a wider sense of interconnection, impermanence, and belonging, increased equanimity and compassion are available. We can act or not act with skill. It matters less whether things are not as they seem, nor are they different.
Thank you, Jeanne.
Sure.
Our topic tonight is relaxing into non-reactivity. And I was preparing some things to say about that. I started thinking about the idea of relax. And in particular, I started thinking about that title, even though I had come up with it or helped come up with it. I started taking issue with it. And I was like, relax. Who relaxes? And I was thinking about this setup where I'm sitting on the couch in my living room and my suitcase is packed. I'm kind of starting to fidget a little bit. Wife's getting ready, getting things together, take the suitcase out to the car, and now I'm really starting to move. Babe, can I help you with anything? No, I'm okay. It's like, it's getting that nervous energy going. And eventually, she says, babe, relax. We got an hour and 38 minutes. We only live 10 minutes from the airport. It's Charlottesville. Have you ever been able to relax when someone says, relax? Right? It doesn't happen. And that idea of this top-down relaxation where we can say, I am experiencing hardship, relax. We can't even say that to ourselves. Just as our partner can't come in to the room when we're experiencing anxiety and give us some sort of a magic, word to set us straight. So what's the problem? What's really going on? Am I going to miss my flight? What's happening? Essentially, I'm somewhere, but I want to be somewhere else, and that's causing me anxiety. And I start to think about this energy, this feeling of wanting to be somewhere that I'm not. What's the problem? I think if we really dig into it, on a very basic level, we have this condition that we need to do something. And we feel like, well, we're sure we need to live. I mean, that's basically what we're doing here. We need to work. We need to be in relation. We need a parent. We need to do our chores. We have all this stuff to do. So where is the entry point for us to find that sense of perspective when we have so much stuff we have to do? It feels a little difficult. And when we really think it through, it's like, okay, we're going to do all this worry and all this stuff, and then what? We're going to die. Damn, I don't like the sound of that. It's gonna end. There's this feeling in our bodies that it's like all this pain, and then what we know of as I is not going to be around anymore. There's like an inherent anxiety in that. And we have these methods that we apply to this problem. We have our spiritual practice. We have our teachers. We have these things that we turn to essentially fix this problem, this problem of this. Alan Watts, I was listening to this book, Still the Mind. It's a great book. He calls it the quaking mess. And essentially what he defines is that this quaking mess, inherently, what it is our desire to be somewhere else. Like that is the quaking mess. And if we look at it even further, we find out that we are the quaking mess. And essentially, we want to be something else than what we are. And that is an insoluble problem. That's to say, that's a problem that does not have a solution. We are who we are. And as Jeanne was pointing out, what we can do is we can try to have clear seeing about what it is and what it isn't. And when we experience this feeling and we notice how it's occurring in our body, how it's showing up in relation to where we are, there's this moment where it's like that question, at least for me, emerges, well, what am I going to do about it? And if you really sit with this idea that the source of the discomfort may be that you want to be something or someone else than what you are, you can kind of start to encounter the untying of that insoluble knot. There's this understanding that I cannot feel any other way than how I feel. How I feel right now is how I am feeling. And there's a ground inside of that understanding of the reality of your experience, where for a moment, resting in that ground of your experience, just as it is, there's an opportunity to slow the wheel of reactivity. And if we think about our meditation practice, what are we doing? We're watching. We're just watching. And as we watch, as we experience the happening, even our reactivity, even our shame for reacting, the wheel continues when we feel shame about feeling shame. There's a secondary thing that happens. We have a judgment, and then we judge ourselves for judging. And the wheel just wants to keep spinning. Recognizing that fact that's even part of the process. Watch that too. We're just watching. We're watching how it is, and we're starting to find this viewership, this openness to how it is. And in that process of watching, we can start to lighten our grip as the one who's controlling this experience, as the one who's dictating what's happening. We are getting inside of the experience. I could talk for much, much longer about this, but I felt like it was summed up pretty well in a poem. This is a really interesting book by Alexis Pauline Gubbs, who writes this book, Dub, Finding Ceremony, and she talks about her origins, and she channels kind of the voices of her ancestors to deal with today. And her ancestors include whales and coral and oceanic bacteria. And it's like this really rooted sense of where she came from. And thinking about this experience, this watching, I really found resonance with this poem. And it says, "What the coral said, breathe, 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 sing. Let that water move within you. Let it be you. Let every cilia dance you into healing. Let the warm salt brighten you, your tears. Sleep. And when you dream of working, sleep again. Sleep until you dream of floating. Dream until your edge is soft. Dream until you birth yourself in water, singing with the bones of all you're lost. Dream until you breathe not from your nose, not from your mouth, but through your hair and through your skin. Dream until you claim the ocean. Breathe until you feel no need to swim. Breathe until dreams flow out your brain. Breathe and let them in your heart. Breathe and we will call you again." That's a start. I love the image of the coral with its skeleton with no substance, how I can just picture the water moving through it. And that image, just wanting to leave you with that image and opening up a little bit of discussion. We have maybe 5 minutes or so for any reflections or feelings about reactivity and how you relate to the content that Jeanne and I are sharing with you. I've got a mic if anybody has anything they want to share. Or on Zoom.
I'm not sure whether this is in conflict with what you said or not, but it seems to me that with practice, that we do have ways to relax. We can tell ourselves to relax and engage. We can use mindfulness to know what's happening, and then we can settle into our bodies to get out of the thought stream. And I mean, it's things that all of us have been practicing. So I just think that's one of the gifts of mindfulness practice. And it is something we can sort of tell ourselves to do. We can't tell our spouses to do it, get in trouble for that, but yeah, that was all I wanted to say. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you, David. Yeah, I think there's a slight distinction being made between our ability to regulate our nervous system and use the tools of mindfulness to relax ourselves, to resource ourselves, and this distinction about inherently wishing ourselves to be some way that we aren't. And I think that the practice of mindfulness, of meditation, the ways that we can resource ourselves to relax the reactivity are absolutely valid. And they stem from the premise that there's this knot that can be tied tighter by resisting, or it can be held in our practice. It can be observed and acknowledged with those tools and resources. So I appreciate you calling out a distinction.
I enjoyed your calling it "we just watch," because I've been having that experience lately of I've been having some pretty severe reactivity lately. And when I invite myself to sit back and watch it, it's startling. It's I can watch the thoughts fire. I can watch the body tense. I can watch it all. And that simple act of watching it, and almost in a sitting back way, not attached to it, it fizzles. It becomes less solid. It sort of dissolves. It's the being able to just watch, I find, does soften the reactivity. Just watching.
So when I was in college, there was this saying that people would, when something hard was happening to you, or maybe you're complaining about it, people would say, yeah, life is hard, then you die. I was thinking, what do you make of that?
It's so funny that you say that, because my wife's family has that same expression. I've never heard it elsewhere, and I almost said it tonight. I think it's absolutely true, and it's almost too much to take in the truth of the suffering and the temptation.
Yeah.
Is to move away from it. And the distinction there is in the act of pulling away. Is there more suffering? And I think the investigation, our willingness to really understand structurally the composition of the original idea, to really look at it and say, what is this? This really basic premise. And can I solve it? And who am I? Who is the one exercising its authority over this problem? And I think that's where Jeanne brings the distinction about delusion and this idea that I am separate from my experience and I have agency over it.
It's good. Good. I actually sort of found that statement freeing in a way. It's like, yep, it's true. I think if you can really accept that at a deep level, it is freeing, even though it's annoying.
You better have that be the last.
Okay.
Holding up the belt. Yeah, I do exactly. I do.
Thank you, both of you. I just, there were two things I was thinking about. Well, the first thing I'll just say that there's someone very close to me who I recently shared the life sucks and then you die version of that, which is quite different, right? Than life's hard and then you die. Hard doesn't mean anything good or bad necessarily. It just means relatively difficult for you, whatever that task is. It could be lifting a weight. It could be doing a math problem, painting something. But that doesn't mean it sucks at all. It could be trying to help someone to understand how you feel, or letting go of trying to influence their understanding of how you feel. Both of those things can be really hard, and one of them might suck and one of them might not. So I think it's probably very useful for me to remember in general that distinction. Life's hard and then you die. I kind of feel neutrally toward that, I believe. I think, but I don't like life sucks and then you die. That's why I'm here, I guess.
Thank you. We will end the practice as we usually do with a dedication. The dedication I like to use comes from Tibetan Buddhism. I like to say it once in Tibetan and once in English. So if you'll join me in just setting your intention to dedicate our practice tonight and the merit of our practice. Sonam di tenam chezik panye tobne nyepe dranam pamche ne keganachi palap trupayi sipe tole chowa sho. By this merit, may omniscience be attained, and may the adversary cliches be conquered. From the ocean of samsara with its stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, may all sentient beings be freed. Thank you all for joining us tonight.
Absolutely.